Hello and welcome to Politics on Sunday. First, let me tell you that we cannot all be mere consumers of good governance. We must be participants and we must be co-creators. On that note, I welcome you to Politics on Sunday. I am Femi Akonde and my guest today is Mohammed Jibrin Barde. He's a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party and the party's governorship candidate in Gombe State. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Femi.
Yes, you left the All Progressives Congress, which is the governing party right now in Gombe State, to the People's Democratic Party. You're now flying his flag as its governorship candidate. Why did you leave the PDP, the APC, a party who currently controls the state, to the PDP?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and that is a very interesting question that I try to always answer succinctly. To be honest, is that there's a failure of leadership in the state, and particularly the governance structure and the way governance is being carried around in the state is one of the major reasons why I had to leave. When you have a leader whose instinct is basically not to be transparent and not to be honest, is just to be dodgy, then, and not to carry everybody along in the state, then the best way and the only alternative way is to seek for other platform in order to provide leadership. We are not seeking power for its sake, but we're seeking the position of authority so that we can provide a very responsible leadership that will lead to development of the state. And therefore, that's why I had to leave the party. We need a platform that is fair, a platform that is transparent, a platform that will carry everybody along and that will run in the interest of the people. Democracy and particularly politics is all about people. And you must go with the consent and with the vote of the people for you to be able to have a successful governance structure or history in your life.
But this party and the Governor Inua, won the popular vote in 2019. Well, so it appears as if he enjoys the confidence of the people.
No, I don't think so. You know, to a large extent, he came to power basically based, as I said to you, this is someone who built his career with an instinct of deceiving people. And basically, the populace or the people of Gombe were sold a monkey, to be honest with you. So he came to power based on deceit, making empty promises to the populace, to the voters, and to the entire state, none of which have been fulfilled in any way or the other. The 100 by 11 roads that he promised is a mirage. The water system in the state is totally neglected.
Let's talk about the roads. Are you saying he has not done any of that, or he has not completed all of it? Because, you know, maybe he's looking at a timeline of 8 years to complete all of these projects.
No, this is someone who promised to deliver 100 kilometers of roads in 11 local governments of the state before the end of his first tenure. None has been achieved. None, not a single one. There were roads that are completed, which was started by the previous administration, fully paid for, some 90% paid for, which are within the metropolis of Gombe local government itself, which is the metropolis of Gombe State, and 1 or 2 that are outside that have actually been paid for by the previous administration of the PDP, which he came to complete. So none of those promises have been kept. We have a dilapidated health and educational facilities across the state. For example, you have about over 590 primary healthcare centers. Completely none of them is functioning. You have about 23 secondary healthcare centers, for which not more than 5 are actually functioning. And you have only 2 tertiary healthcare system, which is being overstretched in the state. When you come to the educational sector, you find out that the only visible development in the educational facilities that you find in the state are those that were done by the previous administration of Ibrahim Dangombo, the former governor under the PDP itself. So you have a dilapidated healthcare and educational infrastructure. Secondly, you have an ill-motivated public service. The public service itself is totally in shambles. Staff are not happy. Nobody gets his promotions. Ministries and departments are being run by overseers. You do not have directors or permanent secretaries that have been appointed to take care of those particular ministries. And you rightly know that the engine room for governance is the public service. And when the public service is ill-motivated, leadership is about people, and institutions are about people. And when you do not agree with good corporate governance and ensure that the right people with the necessary caliber and integrity are being placed in these positions of authority, then what you have is a disaster that you have seen happening in Gombe State. So basically, if you look at it, our rural areas completely neglected, completely. All the other 10 local government areas outside Gombe local government have been neglected completely. There is no single development that takes place in those areas, and they were all huge empty promises that were made, and therefore certainly we are not seeking power for its sake. It's not any long-held ambition for political power that we have. We genuinely believe that we need to provide leadership in order to develop our state, not for ourselves, but for our children, for the future of our children, and for our generation that are yet unborn, certainly. So that's
So what's the disposition of the governed, the people of Gombe State? What's their disposition to the current administration? Do they see things the way you do?
Well, as I said to you, the APC in Gombe State sold a dummy to the indigents of Gombe State, and that is why they were deceiving vote in APC. Gombe is predominantly a PDP state, to be honest with you. And today, the mood in the state is that at the first polls, certainly you'll clearly see that the PDP will reclaim its position. As I said to you, if you look at 2015, for example, PDP was in government in Gombe State. Despite the huge SAC movement, still it was able to hold on to power. But in 2018, 2019, the state was sold a dummy. All of us believe that there will be good leadership in the state, unfortunately, and continue from where the state has built from the times of Hashidu to Anjuma Goje to Ibrahim Hassan Dongombo. But we believe that we've now seen somebody who deliberately just, or what I can say, narcissistically think of only himself and how to dodge and only build things for himself.
You were in the APC, a strong member of the APC,
correct,
and you left based on your own convictions.
Correct.
Are there other people like you who have jumped ship to say, no, this is what we stand for and what we believe in, and we do not think the APC supports that belief, and have joined you in the PDP?
Okay. The party is about people. So if you go back to Gombe, you have a large number of people. I believe in the people. Politics is local.
Sure.
So it's not about a big name, so to speak, but it's about the number of members who have left in troops and came and joined the party, PDP, in order to ensure that about a change is being brought about in Gombe State. In addition to that, there are quite notable other people who have also left and joined the PDP, who we have run for these primaries along with them, and whom after the primaries, some of us that have emerged, still they remain within the party, and they believe that the best thing that we can do is to put our heads together and ensure that we chase this incompetent government so that we will be able to build a proper governance structure for our state.
You know, some people have said politics in Nigeria is usually like a quarrel between politicians and political parties, and other people are now advocating that we should begin to talk about issues in Gombe State. Now, what are the core issues that should dominate the political conversation and campaigns ahead of the election?
Yeah, I've already started touching on most part of those things, and as I said earlier on, you have a totally dilapidated health and educational facilities in the state. You have an ill-motivated public service, and you have rural areas that have totally been neglected by this administration. So the issues are very clear, and we must start thinking of what are the solutions to these problems. And for us in the PDP, we have clearly categorized most of these issues into two. One is the economy, and two is the public service. For me, these are what we call the enablers that we need to use to be able, or stabilizers that we need to use to ensure that we set the state back on the path of development and recovery. In terms of the economy, the most important factor is, one, safeguarding the treasury of the state. The treasury of the state has been irresponsibly looted at the cost of the future of our children. When you say
looted, are there evidence to back it up?
No, absolutely. These are things that I don't say them myself, but they're things that are on record. There is a huge debt overhang in the state. There is nothing wrong with borrowing for development, so long as the money is used for the purpose for which it is being borrowed. If you go to the bank and say, I want to borrow money so that I can invest in construction, for example, and you do not do that, and you take away the money, that is diversion. So also, in governance, when you borrow money for a particular purpose, and rather than use the money for that purpose, you take out the money and stash it in private individuals' pocket, and that becomes a problem. And I'll give you an example. I spoke the other day, contracts were awarded at exorbitant rates, and there were a lot of over-invoicing. On one contract alone, we have seen, given generous amounts of money that is unimaginable, on one transaction alone, that contract over-invoicing of over 5.1 billion has taken place. Particularly, I'm referring to the contract that were granted for the installation of solar street lights across Gombe, 113 kilometers of road, which translates into 113,000 meters. And the distance between one pole and the other is 25 meters. So if you divide 113,000 meters by 25 meters, you'll get about 4,520 poles. 4,520 poles. I am not the one that said this. It's the government that said they have awarded this contract. So if you bring this down and do the numbers, even at 400,000 naira, which is a generous amount today, not as at the time that the contract was awarded, per one pole being installed with the civil works, it's about 1.8 billion. And for a governor to borrow 10 billion naira from United Bank of Africa and then award this contract for 6.9 billion, meaning it's over invoiced by 5.1 billion. Somebody somewhere has shortchanged the state with 5.1 billion naira. Another contract was awarded from the remaining balance for what they call biometric capture for or attendance of public servant at about 1.5 billion naira. I mean, I don't want to speak out of context, but I want to say that any single individual who indulges himself in this kind of activity is basically stealing the future of the state.
All right, then hold your thoughts on that. We'll continue with our conversation after this quick break. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching Politics on Sunday. We'll continue our conversation with the People's Democratic Party's governorship candidate in Gombe State, Mohammed Jibrin Barde. Thank you for staying with us. Now we're talking corruption before we went on this break. If you are elected to be governor of Gombe State, what would be your disposition to the fight against corruption, transparency, and accountability in government?
Okay. As I started telling you earlier on, Femi, corruption for me is not so much as is the problem. Anybody who steals money, you can actually arrest that person, try him, prosecute him, and deal with him. That's the end of it. The major issue is when you have corrupt people in key public service positions, from governor to the deputy governor, to the secretary to the state government, to the directors and to the permanent secretaries, then it becomes systemic. They subvert and continue to corrupt the system, and it becomes cancerous. And therefore you cannot root it out. So the only way is to ensure that people of integrity and people who are committed to good governance are being placed in very key position, because it is them that will bring about development. It is them that will bring about policies that will help in developing an economy. So the only way to answer you And the best way to deal with corruption is always to ensure good corporate governance and ensure that people of integrity and people of high caliber who do not compromise gets themselves into key public service position, including leadership. And that is one way, and that is why we are offering ourselves. We believe that the most important thing in leadership is to hold the trust of people, to be honest, to be fair, and to be just, and to apply their resources for their own usage. And I'll give you an example. During the lifetime, I'm a Muslim, and during the lifetime of the Caliphate of Islam, Caliphate Umar bin Abdulaziz, one of his household servants or employees came into him while he was studying Gamma report, and under a lamp, he ordered him to put out the lamp, that you should not use this lamp because it is being purchased with public funds, and therefore you do not use people's money for your private business. That is the kind of approach that we're bringing into governance. That governance is about service, not to be served. Governance is about giving and not to take. And that is what we want to bring into Gombe State.
You have a vast experience in the private sector, especially in banking. How will all of these rub off on the economy of the state if you get elected as governor?
Okay. As I said earlier on, clearly you need good corporate governance. But that is not enough to jumpstart an economy, especially an economy that has a debt overhang of almost 430-something billion naira, with about 21 billion naira in pension arrears that hasn't been paid, and with an ill-motivated public service who have been denied their rights, who have been denied their promotions, who have been denied their proper placement in the service. What you need to do is to look at the economy as a whole and say, what is our plan? Number one, we need to ensure that we restructure our loans, because there is no way you can. By the way, in July, the state was on a negative cash flow of almost 200 million naira. They had to borrow another almost 9.6 billion naira through what they call the jewel scook before they were able to be to now augment their finances. Of course, they have received some ecological funds from the federal government, but that is not enough. When you take these loans and continue to siphon them into private pockets, then you have a problem. But how do we deal with that problem? Okay. You do a debt buyback. That is one of the solutions that you have to look at it. Restructure your loans and then ensure that going forward, what are those key economic areas that you need to support as a driver in the driver's seat, as a government in the driver's seat? What are those key economic activities areas that you need to support to jumpstart the economy, create employment, and ensure that you put back a lot of people back to work? One, Gombe State is known as basically an agricultural state. It's also one of the thriving northeastern business hubs of the country. And therefore, our businessmen, their capital has actually been taken away, especially with the consequence or the effects of COVID-19. A lot of people have lost value in their wealth. So you need to provide support for those people. Farmers today are not getting support from the government. No farming inputs that are being provided for them as it was before. And you need to start thinking, how do you mechanize your farming and follow the value chain? The state is endowed with 2 major dams that really need to be put to use such that it can come back to help our farmers and in irrigation farming and the rest of that. We need to also look at industrializing the state. The state is endowed with mineral resources, coal, limestone, gold. We need to start thinking, how do we help our businesses to have modular cement factories? How do we support them and ensure that that is being used? Today, the country's demand for coal, for example, is over 100,000 metric tons. The actual output that is being produced in the country is not more than 50,000 metric tons. So it means that somehow, somewhere, we're importing to augment this in, while we have these natural resources lying idle in our states. How do we now support our businesses as a government to make sure that those natural resources are extracted to the extent that they are now starting producing economic activities for our state and then generating employment level for our state? lastly, you need to look at the infrastructure that is on ground, particularly healthcare and education, because unless you are able to revamp those dilapidated health infrastructure and educational infrastructure, you cannot think of a genuine development in the future to come. And these are the things that you really need to do.
Yeah, you said the current administration led by Governor Inua promised to do certain things within the first term of their office, within their his first term in office. If you are elected now, let me put you on the hot seat. What are the things you would say are the deliverables within your first term in office?
Okay, as I said to you again, the first thing that one must do is to make sure that you have the right people to work with. And not only the right people, you must have a highly motivated workforce. And for me, that is one of the major stabilizers for the economy. We must reinvigorate our public service and give them the confidence that they can actually contribute their own quota to the development of the state. That's one. Two, we must ensure that we revamp our education and health facilities. That is very key for me. And look, it's been said that the best people who can defend education are those citizens who have benefited from that system. I am one of the beneficiaries of a government education system in this country, and it is sad, it kills me, honestly, to my bone marrow, that I see the level of the decay of our educational system. For me, that is very key. These are the things that we must do in place immediately. We will ensure that we provide free education at all levels to our own indigents and compulsory. We will also ensure that the education is being provided for access, for quality, and for relevance. These are very important things that must be done, because education must meet these three criteria. Because somebody may like to go to a Quranic school, for example, and Islamic studies. Somebody may like to go to Bible school, for example, and that is what he chooses. And somebody will want to pursue a Western education. So you must be able to identify these things and have a policy framework immediately within the first few days of your administration or few months of your administration to make sure that these policy frameworks are in place. And by the way, we actually have a manifesto that we are coming out with by the end of this month to make sure that these are the things that we will do and our promises will be there. Thank you.
All right, then. We have seen pockets of violence in your state as the whole political atmosphere heats up, and it's beginning to become a cause for worry. Aren't you worried too by all of this? Because it's the APC, the PDP, and other supporters of other parties that appear to be involved in all of this.
No, I think basically it's very worrisome. It's very worrisome. And to a large extent, it is a consequence of bad leadership. Let me put it that way. It's a consequence of bad leadership, as I said. Because if you look at it, the previous administration of Ibrahim Hassan Gombe, what he did was to rehabilitate those youth that were hitherto not employed and ensure that they are brought back into mainstay and they are gainfully employed. He introduced the martial corps in the state. However, when this governor came, he disbanded them and completely created a very huge unemployment rate among the youth in the state. And you have seen his activities recently, where he is the one that by his action and by his words that is actually encouraging thuggery in the state. And I can tell you clearly that it is worrisome, but we are not worried to a large extent. We believe that democracy can only thrive if people are allowed freely to exercise their own civic duties and responsibilities. We believe the security agencies are friends to the public, and we know that they are not going to stop people from exercising their civic duties.
All right, last question in 10 seconds. How well do you fancy the chances of your presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, against others like Asiwaju Bola Tinubu of the APC, Peter Obi of the Labour Party, and Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, and indeed the area of presidential candidates we have?
Well, what you need to look at is very clear, that the scorecard of anybody in governance and those that are coming in with their own policy framework is enough for you to make your choices. The country is in a mode now, and basically PDP is the most populous country party in the country.
You think
and
so?
I can tell you that the PDP
but the APC is in government.
I can tell you that we will, by the grace of God, we will win elections.
Well, and the people will decide. The people will decide that. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Well, that's all we have time for on the program today. You can watch this episode again on TVC News YouTube channel. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you so much for your time on the program. See you next time.